In the quiet hours of a Tuesday morning in March 2025, when most of the world was still asleep, something extraordinary happened. The official social media accounts of the Prince and Princess of Wales posted something that made millions of people stop scrolling, rub their eyes, and look again. These weren't the usual polished formal portraits we had grown accustomed to seeing from the royal family. Instead, Catherine and William had shared something so personal, so genuine, and so unexpected that it sent shockwaves through royal circles and captured hearts around the globe. The photos showed moments that felt stolen from a private family album. Candid shots of laughter, quiet conversations, and tender embraces that revealed a side of the royal couple the public had never seen before. Within hours, these intimate glimpses into their real lives had broken the internet, sparked countless conversations about modern monarchy, and reminded everyone that behind the titles and traditions were two people deeply in love, raising their family while carrying the weight of a nation's expectations. But what led to this unprecedented moment of vulnerability? What made the famously private couple decide to pull back the curtain and show the world who they really were when the cameras weren't officially rolling? The story behind these remarkable photographs reveals a journey of growth, challenge, and ultimately, a decision that would forever change how the world saw the future King and Queen of England. The year 2024 had been particularly challenging for Catherine and William. As they settled into their roles as the Prince and Princess of Wales, the pressure to maintain the perfect royal image had become almost suffocating. Every public appearance was meticulously planned, every photograph carefully staged, and every moment scrutinized by millions around the world. The couple found themselves living under a microscope that seemed to magnify with each passing year. Catherine often found herself staring at the official portraits that lined the walls of their private residence at Adelaide Cottage. The images were beautiful, certainly, but they felt cold and distant. In each photograph, she and William wore their public faces, polished, composed, and carefully neutral. These were the faces the world knew, but they weren't really them. The real Catherine laughed loudly at William's terrible jokes, sometimes snorted when something was particularly funny, and had been known to chase their children through the house with muddy Wellington boots still on her feet. The real William was far from the stoic future king the public saw. He did silly voices when reading bedtime stories, could spend hours building elaborate Lego castles with George, Charlotte, and Louis, and had an infectious laugh that could fill an entire room. He worried constantly about being a good father while preparing to be king, often staying up late into the night discussing with Catherine how to give their children as normal a childhood as possible while preparing them for their extraordinary futures. It was during one of these late-night conversations in February 2025 that Catherine first voiced what had been bothering her for months. They were sitting in their kitchen sharing a pot of tea after putting the children to bed when she looked at her husband and said something that would change everything. "I feel like we're disappearing, William. Not the Prince and Princess of Wales, they're doing fine. But us, Catherine and William. The people who fell in love at university, who used to laugh until our stomachs hurt, who weren't afraid to be real with each other. I miss those people." William set down his teacup and really looked at his wife. He saw the exhaustion in her eyes, not just from their busy schedule, but from the constant performance their lives had become. She was right. Somewhere along the way, they had become so focused on being the perfect royal couple that they had lost sight of what made them special in the first place, their genuine connection and authentic love for each other. "I've been thinking the same thing," William admitted. "Remember when we were just William and Kate from university? When we could be silly and make mistakes and no one cared? I know we can't go back to that completely, but maybe we don't have to lose ourselves entirely either." Catherine reached across the table and took his hand. "What if we tried something different? What if, just once, we showed people who we really are when we're not being the Prince and Princess of Wales?" The idea seemed almost revolutionary. For generations, the royal family had maintained a careful distance from the public, revealing only what was necessary and keeping their private lives firmly private. But Catherine and William belonged to a different generation. They had grown up in an age of social media and authentic connection. They understood that people were hungry for something real, something genuine. "The palace would never approve," William said. But there was a spark of interest in his voice. "Then maybe we don't ask for approval," Catherine replied, surprising herself with her boldness. "Maybe we just do it." Over the next few weeks, the idea began to take shape. They weren't talking about exposing their children or sharing inappropriate details of their private lives. Instead, they wanted to show the moments in between, the real laughter, the comfortable silences, the way they looked at each other when they thought no one was watching. Catherine had always been interested in photography, a hobby she had quietly pursued since her art history days at university. She had documented their family life through the years, capturing moments that were too precious and too personal to share with the official royal photographers. These were the images that truly told their story. William making funny faces to make the children laugh during a formal photo shoot, Catherine covering her mouth to hide her giggles during a serious ceremony, the two of them stealing a private moment together during a public event. "What if we use some of those photos?" Catherine suggested one evening as they looked through her personal collection. "Not the family ones with the children, but the ones of us, the real moments." William studied the photographs spread across their dining table. There was one of him looking at Catherine with such obvious adoration that it made him slightly embarrassed to see it captured so clearly. Another showed Catherine laughing so hard at something he had whispered during a state dinner that she had tears in her eyes. These weren't the composed, formal images the world was used to seeing. These were raw and real and beautiful in their honesty. "These are us," he said quietly. "This is who we are when we're not performing." The decision wasn't made overnight. They spent weeks discussing the implications, the potential backlash, and the reaction from both the palace and the public. They knew they would be criticized for breaking with tradition, for being too informal, for sharing too much. But they also knew that something had to change. The final push came from an unexpected source. During a school visit in early March, Catherine was speaking with a group of teenagers about mental health and authenticity. One young woman raised her hand and asked a question that stopped Catherine in her tracks. "Your Royal Highness, you always look so perfect and put together. Do you ever just feel like a regular person? Do you ever have bad days or moments when you don't know what you're doing?" Catherine looked at this brave young woman and felt a pang of recognition. How many people felt like they had to be perfect all the time? How many young women looked at her carefully curated public image and felt like they could never measure up to such an impossible standard? "You know," Catherine said, stepping away from her prepared remarks. "I think we all put on a bit of a performance sometimes, don't we? We all want to show our best selves to the world. But the truth is, yes, I have days when I don't feel like I know what I'm doing. I have moments when I laugh too loudly or say something awkward or trip over my own feet. And those moments don't make me less worthy or less valuable. They make me human." The room was completely silent. This wasn't the typical royal response. This was real, honest, and vulnerable, and it was exactly what these young people needed to hear. That evening, Catherine told William about the conversation. "I realized today that by always showing this perfect version of ourselves, we might be doing more harm than good. What message are we sending to young people about authenticity and self-acceptance?" William nodded, thoughtfully. He had been having his own moments of clarity during recent engagements. When he spoke to young fathers about work-life balance, he found himself wanting to share his own struggles with managing royal duties and family time. When he discussed mental health, he wanted to talk about his own journey with grief and pressure rather than speaking in carefully crafted generalities. "Maybe it's time," he said finally. "Maybe it's time to show people that we're just like them in the ways that matter most." They decided to start small. Instead of sharing the photos through official palace channels with all the usual protocols and approvals, they would post them directly to their personal social media accounts. Just a few images that showed genuine moments between them, accompanied by a simple, honest caption about love, partnership, and the importance of staying true to yourself, even when the world is watching. The plan was both terrifying and exhilarating. They would be stepping outside the carefully constructed boundaries that had protected the royal family for generations. But they would also be stepping into something new, a more authentic, accessible monarchy that could truly connect with people in the modern world. As they finalized their selection of photographs, Catherine felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement that reminded her of the early days of their relationship, when everything felt new and uncertain, but full of possibility. They were about to show the world something precious and real, and there was no way to predict how people would respond. "Are you sure about this?" William asked as they prepared to upload the first photo. Catherine looked at the image on the screen, a candid shot of them during a private moment at a royal engagement, looking at each other with such obvious love and connection that it made her heart skip a beat even now. "I've never been more sure of anything," she replied. "It's time for people to see who we really are." The first photograph went live at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in March 2025. Catherine had been awake since 4:30, too nervous to sleep, checking and rechecking the caption she had written to accompany the image. The photo showed her and William during a private moment at a charity gala the previous year. They were standing slightly apart from the crowd, and William was leaning down to whisper something in her ear that had clearly delighted her. Her eyes were bright with laughter, and his expression was soft and affectionate. It was a glimpse of their private dynamic in a public setting, intimate without being inappropriate, real without being too revealing. The caption was simple and heartfelt. Sometimes the most beautiful moments happen in between the official ones. Grateful for a partner who still makes me laugh after all these years, and for the reminder that love and joy can be found even in the most formal settings. Here's to staying real in a world that often asks us to be perfect. William sat beside her on their bed, laptop balanced on his knees, finger hovering over the post button. They had rehearsed this moment, but now that it was here, the magnitude of what they were about to do felt overwhelming. Last chance to change our minds, he said, though his tone suggested he was as committed as she was. Post it, Catherine said firmly. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. The response was immediate and unlike anything they had anticipated. Within minutes, the post had thousands of likes and hundreds of comments. By the time they finished breakfast with the children an hour later, the numbers had climbed into the tens of thousands. But more surprising than the volume of engagement was the tone of the responses. Finally, royals who seem like real people. This is the most beautiful thing I've seen all year. Thank you for showing us that love is love, no matter who you are. As a young married couple, seeing this gives us hope. You two look at each other the way we hope to still look at each other after years of marriage. Thank you for being authentic. It means more than you know. The comments kept coming, a stream of positivity and gratitude that neither Catherine nor William had expected. People weren't criticizing them for being too casual or breaking protocol. Instead, they were thanking them for being human. But the real test came when Catherine's phone rang at 8:30 a.m. The caller ID showed it was from the palace's communications office. Catherine, came the voice of the communications secretary. We need to talk. The conversation that followed was tense but not as explosive as Catherine had feared. The palace staff were concerned, certainly, but they couldn't argue with the overwhelmingly positive public response. The post was being shared across every social media platform, picked up by news outlets around the world, and generating the kind of positive press for the royal family that money couldn't buy. The king would like to speak with both of you this afternoon, the secretary said finally. Catherine felt her stomach drop. King Charles had always been supportive of her and William, but this was uncharted territory. They were essentially bypassing the entire royal communications apparatus and communicating directly with the public in their own voices. We'll be there, she replied, though she wondered if they would still have jobs by the end of the day. The meeting with King Charles was scheduled for 2 p.m. at Clarence House. Catherine spent the morning in a state of nervous energy, second-guessing their decision and imagining worst-case scenarios. William, characteristically, was more philosophical about the situation. We did what felt right, he told her as they prepared to leave for the meeting. Whatever consequences there are, we'll deal with them. But I don't regret showing people who we really are. King Charles received them in his study, a room Catherine had been in many times, but which felt particularly formal and intimidating today. The king looked serious as they entered, and Catherine braced herself for a lecture about protocol and tradition. Instead, Charles surprised them both. I've been watching the response to your post, he said without preamble. The public reaction has been extraordinary. People are responding to you in a way they haven't responded to the royal family in years. Catherine and William exchanged a glance, unsure where this conversation was heading. However, Charles continued, and Catherine's heart sank, this kind of direct communication with the public requires careful consideration. We can't have every member of the family deciding independently how to represent the crown. We understand, sir, William began, but his father held up a hand. I'm not finished. What you've done today has reminded me of something important. The monarchy survives because it adapts, because it finds ways to remain relevant and connected to the people we serve. Your generation understands something about authentic communication that mine is still learning. Catherine could hardly believe what she was hearing. What I'm saying is this. If you're going to continue this approach, and I think you should, we need to do it thoughtfully, with guidelines and boundaries that protect both you and the institution. But today, you've shown that there's a hunger for authenticity that we've been underestimating. The conversation that followed was unlike any they had ever had with the king. Charles spoke about his own struggles with public perception, about feeling constrained by tradition, even when he believed change was necessary. He talked about watching William and Catherine navigate their roles with a natural grace that he envied, and about his growing belief that the younger generation of royals had insights that could strengthen the monarchy rather than weaken it. The key, Charles said, is maintaining dignity while being human. Based on what I've seen today, you two understand that balance better than anyone. They left Clarence House with something they hadn't expected, not just permission to continue their more authentic approach to public engagement, but encouragement and support. The king had asked only that they discuss future posts with the communications team, not for approval but for coordination and support. Over the next few days, Catherine and William shared 2 more photographs. The second showed them during a private moment at a state dinner, Catherine adjusting William's bow tie while he looked down at her with an expression of complete adoration. The third was a candid shot from a recent royal engagement where they were both laughing at something. One of the children they were visiting had said, their formal composure completely forgotten in a moment of genuine delight. Each post generated the same kind of overwhelmingly positive response. But more than that, they began to notice changes in how people interacted with them during public engagements. Where once people had seemed slightly odd and distant, now they approached Catherine and William with warmth and familiarity. Children were less shy, adults more willing to share personal stories, and everyone seemed more relaxed in their presence. It's like we've given people permission to see us as human, Catherine observed to William after a particularly warm reception at a school opening. Or maybe we've given ourselves permission to be human, William replied. The media response was more mixed but largely positive. Some traditionalists criticized what they saw as an undignified departure from royal protocol. But these voices were drowned out by praise from commentators, who saw the couple's authenticity as exactly what the monarchy needed to remain relevant in the 21st century. Perhaps the most meaningful response came from an unexpected source. Catherine received a letter from the teenage girl who had asked her about feeling perfect during the school visit. The letter was handwritten and heartfelt. Dear Catherine, it read, "Thank you for showing me that it's okay to be real. After seeing your photos and reading what you wrote, I stopped trying to look perfect all the time. I started laughing more and worrying less about what other people think. If someone as important as you can be authentic, then maybe I can too. You've changed my life by just being yourself." 6 months after that first photograph changed everything, Catherine stood in the same kitchen where the conversation had begun. But the world around her felt completely transformed. What had started as a simple desire to be more authentic had grown into something far more significant than either she or William could have imagined. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. In the weeks following their initial posts, Catherine and William had continued to share carefully chosen photographs that revealed different aspects of their relationship and personalities. There was the image of William attempting to teach Catherine how to play cricket in their garden, both of them dissolving into laughter as she completely missed the ball. Another showed Catherine reading to William from a book while he pretended to be asleep on their sofa, one eye clearly cracked open and a smile threatening to break across his face. Each photograph told a story of partnership, humor, and genuine affection. But more than that, they revealed 2 people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company, who were best friends as well as spouses, and who weren't afraid to be silly together even while carrying the weight of future kingship. The public's hunger for this authenticity seemed insatiable. Each new post generated millions of interactions, was shared countless times across social media platforms, and sparked conversations about modern relationships, authentic leadership, and the evolving role of monarchy in contemporary society. But the real change became apparent during their public engagements. The shift in how people related to them was profound and immediate. During a visit to a children's hospital, Catherine noticed that the young patient seemed less intimidated by her formal title and more interested in talking to her like a regular person. One 7-year-old boy asked her if she and William still had pillow fights like the picture where they were laughing in bed, a photo that had been taken during a lazy Sunday morning, both of them reading different sections of the newspaper and sharing amusing headlines. "Sometimes," Catherine had replied with a grin, "but I always win." The boy had burst into delighted laughter. And Catherine realized that this kind of easy connection would never have been possible when she was maintaining her previous level of formal distance. William experienced similar changes during his engagements. During a visit to a men's mental health charity, participants spoke to him with a level of openness that surprised his staff. They shared personal struggles about balancing work and family life, about feeling pressure to be perfect, about the difficulty of maintaining authentic relationships in demanding careers. It was clear that seeing William as someone who also navigated these challenges, rather than as an untouchable royal figure, made them feel safe to be vulnerable. "It's like they see us as peers now, rather than as people from another world," William observed to Catherine after that particular visit. "They know we struggle with some of the same things they do." The institutional changes were equally significant. The palace communications team, initially nervous about the departure from traditional protocol, began to embrace the new approach as they saw the consistently positive results. They developed new guidelines that allowed for more personal communication while maintaining appropriate boundaries around the children's privacy and sensitive royal business. King Charles, who had been cautiously supportive from the beginning, became an enthusiastic advocate for their approach as he watched the positive impact on the monarchy's reputation. Public approval ratings for the royal family reached levels not seen in decades, and Catherine and William found themselves being held up as examples of modern leadership in contexts far beyond royal circles. "You've reminded people why the monarchy matters," Charles told them during one of their regular family dinners. "Not because of tradition or ceremony, but because you represent values that people can connect with. Love, partnership, service, and authenticity." The international response had been equally remarkable. Catherine and William found themselves being invited to speak at conferences about authentic leadership and modern communication. They declined most of these invitations, preferring to let their actions speak rather than becoming formal spokespeople for authenticity. But the recognition that their approach had implications far beyond their own lives was both humbling and inspiring. Perhaps the most unexpected development was the impact on other public figures. Politicians, celebrities, and business leaders began adopting more personal, authentic communication styles, often explicitly referencing the Cambridge approach as their inspiration. The idea that vulnerability and authenticity could be sources of strength rather than weakness began to spread far beyond the royal family. Catherine received hundreds of letters from people around the world sharing how the royal couple's authenticity had influenced their own lives. A businessman from Germany wrote about how he had started being more honest with his employees about challenges facing their company, leading to better problem-solving and higher morale. A teacher from Australia described how she had begun sharing her own learning struggles with her students, creating a classroom environment where mistakes were seen as opportunities rather than failures. One letter that particularly moved Catherine came from a young woman in Canada who had been struggling with social anxiety. She wrote that seeing Catherine and William be genuinely themselves, including moments of awkwardness or imperfection, had helped her realize that she didn't need to be flawless to be worthy of connection and respect. She had started therapy, joined a social group, and was slowly building the authentic relationship she had always wanted, but had been too afraid to pursue. "This is what makes it all worthwhile," Catherine said to William as she shared the letter with him, "knowing that being ourselves has helped other people feel permission to be themselves too." The approach wasn't without its challenges. There were still critics who believed the royal family should maintain more formal distance from the public. Some traditionalists argued that too much accessibility could diminish the mystique and respect that surrounded the monarchy. Catherine and William had to carefully navigate the balance between being relatable and maintaining the dignity appropriate to their roles. They also had to be constantly mindful of their children's privacy. While they shared moments between themselves, they were careful never to include George, Charlotte, and Louis in their more personal posts. Their children's childhood was already more public than most, and Catherine and William were determined to protect their right to grow up with as much normalcy as possible. The learning curve was steep. There were posts that didn't land quite right, moments when they shared too much or too little, and times when they had to quickly clarify their intentions when messages were misunderstood. But each mistake taught them something about how to communicate more effectively, and the public seemed to appreciate their willingness to learn and adjust rather than expecting perfection from the beginning. As the one-year anniversary of their first authentic post approached, Catherine and William took time to reflect on how profoundly their lives and roles had changed. They were still the Prince and Princess of Wales, still preparing for their future roles as King and Queen, still carrying out hundreds of royal engagements each year. But they were doing it all as recognizably themselves, rather than as carefully constructed public personas. "Do you ever miss the simplicity of the old way?" William asked Catherine one evening as they reviewed their schedule for the following week. Catherine considered the question seriously. The old approach had certainly been easier in some ways. There had been clear boundaries, established protocols, and less emotional investment in public reactions. But it had also been isolating and ultimately unsustainable. "No," she said finally. "I don't miss feeling like I was playing a character all the time. I don't miss the distance it created between us and the people we're supposed to serve. And I definitely don't miss lying awake at night wondering if we were making any real difference in the world." "The work feels more meaningful now," William agreed. "When people connect with us as real people, the conversations we have are deeper, the impact feels more lasting, and the relationships we build are more genuine." As they looked ahead to their future roles, both Catherine and William felt confident that they had found a sustainable way to balance the demands of royal duty with their commitment to authentic leadership. They had proven that it was possible to modernize the monarchy without abandoning its core values, to be accessible without being undignified, and to show vulnerability without showing weakness. The photographs that had started it all still generated engagement and positive responses whenever people encountered them for the first time. But they were no longer remarkable for their authenticity. They had become the standard for how Catherine and William communicated with the world. Perhaps the most significant change was how they felt about their own relationship. The decision to share their genuine connection with the world had somehow strengthened that connection, rather than making it feel exposed or vulnerable. They had learned that authenticity was not something to be protected and hidden, but something to be shared and celebrated. "I think," Catherine said as they prepared for bed on a quiet evening in their home, "we've become better versions of ourselves by deciding to let people see who we really are." William nodded, pulling her close. "And I think we've helped other people become better versions of themselves too. That might be the most royal thing we've ever done." Outside their window, the world continued to turn, but something fundamental had shifted in how people thought about leadership, authenticity, and the courage required to be genuinely yourself in a world that often rewards performance over substance. Catherine and William had started a quiet revolution simply by deciding to love each other openly and honestly, and the ripple effects of that decision would continue to spread far beyond anything they could have imagined when they posted that first photograph on a nervous Tuesday morning in March 2025. Catherine read the letter 3 times before showing it to William. This was why they had taken the risk. This was why authenticity mattered. They weren't just changing how people saw the royal family, they were changing how young people saw themselves. But the most surprising development was still to come. As word of their new approach spread, they began receiving requests from other royal families around the world. Everyone wanted to know how they had managed to modernize their image while maintaining respect and dignity. Catherine and William found themselves in the unlikely position of being consultants on royal authenticity. "Who would have thought," William joked to Catherine one evening as they reviewed yet another interview request from an international publication, "that being ourselves would become a diplomatic tool." As March drew to a close, Catherine and William realized that their spontaneous decision to share those intimate photographs had become something much larger than they had anticipated. They had accidentally started a movement toward more authentic royal representation, and the positive response had given them the confidence to continue pushing boundaries. The 3 photographs they had shared so far were just the beginning. They had dozens more in Catherine's personal collection, each one telling a part of their story that the official royal portraits had never captured. But more importantly, they had discovered a new way of connecting with people that felt honest and sustainable. "What do you think comes next?" Catherine asked William as they sat together one evening, planning their next post. "I think," William said thoughtfully, "we keep being ourselves. And we see where that takes us." Neither of them could have predicted where that journey would lead, or how profoundly it would change not just their own lives, but the future of the monarchy itself.